Hello and welcome everyone to this new video series that I am doing, Q&A with Father Kent, where I'm responding to various questions that I have received over the past weeks or months or years about why we do things at Good Shepherd. Why do we do things the way that we do? And, we try to be as transparent and as communicative as possible, but I still sometimes hear that people don't know what's going on and people don't know why decisions are being made. And so I am doing this video series, and I will plan to type out a rough transcript of this for people that would rather read than listen to a video about various aspects of what's going on. And so the first question that I'm going to answer, and we're going to have kind of a whole library of this. It's a plan. If you can go and click into those particular things that you want to listen about. The first one is about bells, because I have heard some questions about why we are ringing bells at Mass at Good Shepherd when that has not been our custom in the past. And so why are we doing that? Where'd that come from? And I'm trying to respond to that. Now, I will also say I'm recording this here on the Feast of Christ the King, Sunday, November the 20th, 2022, and we are planning to take a rest from the bells here in the time of Advent because it's a more penitential time, it's a quieter time, and we will plan to also take a rest from the bells during the Lenten time. It's a quieter time, it's a penitential time. But in those other times, we're planning to ring the bells, at least for now. Now, how did that all come about? Well, I'll tell you. It's kind of a multi-layered question to respond to this. So first of all, in the summer of 2021, the staff did a cleaning project and exploring the various storage areas that we had in the parish and trying to maybe be more efficient with the way that we use our storage. And we did the same thing in 2022, kind of a work day. And I discovered in a closet that we had bells. I didn't even know that we had bells. And so I would not have purchased bells, but we had them. Actually, we had two sets. One is nicer than the other. One is really nice, and the other not so much. But it's got a really nice tone. And so we found these bells that already existed at Good Shepherd. So I took note of that, and I just wondered when could we possibly use this, if we would ever use this. They were available to us should we want to. Okay? So then the other aspect is there is a notion of what's called progressive solemnity. And what that means, progressive solemnity, is that there is a progression of the importance of feasts. On the one end, you've got the Easter Vigil, which is the highest of feasts. And on the other end, you've got like a Tuesday of the 7th week of ordinary time or something. They are on opposite ends of importance of the celebration of the Mass. And what we should do liturgically should reflect, this is a higher feast than this other one. In the higher feasts, we should sing more. We should have more elements. There is the expression you've perhaps heard where you pull out all the stops. Well, that's an organ term where you would pull out all the stops of the organ and really just blast away so you could just on these big old feasts, right? So you can think of Easter and all the stops are pulled because you really want to rejoice. So there's this notion of progressive solemnity, aspects of music and other elements. Now, one of the elements that I've used to mark special days on the calendar is the use of incense. I love incense. I think it smells beautiful. As a Catholic, we are people that are very sensual, that we use our senses of smell and sight and sound and all those things very, very much in the body. And so I like incense for that very reason. It just fills another sense. It's like you can smell it. However, I have heard several people have some serious breathing issues, asthma or otherwise, and asthma, the incense causes them some real problems. Now, we do have hypoallergenic incense that we use. We try to be as cautious as possible, but I have heard that's still not enough. Also, I've also heard that the way our church is constructed, apparently there are the air flow goes kind of right into the choir loft, which is exactly the place you don't want the airflow to go with incense. And so sometimes the choir can get big old whiffs of incense. That can make it tough to sing. So I've basically been instructed to never use incense because it's problematic for the people here at Good Shepherd. Okay, trying to be a good pastor, responding. So that tool is out of my toolbox, so I can't mark the special times with the use of incense. Okay, so when Christmas was coming up in 2021, I talked to the worship commission and I suggested this idea, and I thought it would be a good way, because we can't use incense, what if we marked the Christmas season with bells to show the difference between Advent and ordinary time, and Christmas is a higher season. When I would have normally used incense at Christmas and other times, I love using that incense, and it really goes with words of what child is this? So bring him incense, gold, and myrrh. And I love just swinging that incense there. That brings us all into the celebration. But since that was off the table, we thought, let's mark the season with the bells. There's even songs, the bells of Christmas. I think that people think of bells during Christmas. So that gave us just an opportunity to heighten the season, not use the incense, being respectful to those who have allergies and concerns with that. So we did not use the incense, but we used the bells. So then we gave them a rest then for ordinary time and then for Lent. And then several people said that they really liked it. Several people said that they didn't like them. But we thought we'd do the same thing during the time of Easter and mark the season as well with that time of Easter, instead of using the incense, to use the bells. Okay. Well, again, people were liking them. I heard more comments that really enjoyed them rather than those that didn't. So I sent out a survey to the worship commission asking what they thought about it. And it kind of came back 50-50. And so then as pastor, I had to make a decision. Well, what are we going to do? So I just decided let's continue the use of the bells throughout ordinary time. And there are several reasons that was decided. And why? Well, one is we are now in this time of the bishops are calling for a greater understanding of Eucharistic amazement and what is the Eucharist. And there was that survey that came out a few years ago, and I don't entirely trust surveys because I don't know how the questions were written and all those things. But there was that survey that went out, and the survey came back, and it seemed to say that many Catholics did not believe in the real presence of the Eucharist, and they thought it was a symbol or something else or whatever. Again, I don't know how the questions were exactly written. But even if that survey is not entirely accurate, but somewhat accurate, and there are Catholics in our pews that don't believe in the real presence of the Eucharist, that it really is God, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, that's set in our hands and set in our mouths. If there are Catholics that don't believe that, well, maybe we need to kind of focus on that and emphasize the beauty of the Eucharist and say at that moment, at the moment of the consecration, boom, there is a change. It just happened. And let's mark it with the bells. So there was that. The other thing is, I know this is a minor thing, but I know that the servers, for the most part, like to have things to do, and they, for the most part, are enjoying ringing the bells. Now, some of them are a little bit scared about when they do that, but for the most part, I think they find it a privilege to do that at that moment. And so that's it's a minor piece, but it's a nice thing for the servers to have something more to do with their time. And so those were the main reason is let's bring awareness to that moment of the consecration. Now, an objection that I've heard to the bells is, one, people think that it's like pre-Vatican II, or why are we doing this? And it's not. It's one of the elements that was never tossed out in the Second Vatican Council. It's an option, but it's certainly something that we can do. But the other objection, which I think is a fair objection, is people say, why are we doing this? Because the bells were rung at a time when the Mass was in Latin, the priest had his back to the people didn't understand what was going on. So you had to ring the bells to bring attention to this point because nobody knew what was going on. So you ring the bells and like, oh, okay, I'm done praying my rosary. I'll look up and there I can see the host. Okay, now I can go back to praying my rosary. Okay. I think it's a fair criticism of why we shouldn't be using the bells, because they will say that we know what's going on now. The Mass is in English. The priest is facing the people. We understand and we know. However, to that point, I might say I have heard many people say that they are distracted during Mass. They're distracted during their prayer. Many people, and especially in our parish today, we've got lots of young families and kids running around. We've got some kids running around in the narthex and all those things. And people can drift off and forget. I think that the bells are kind of a nice calling back to be attentive here. So it's not that people aren't necessarily being attentive, but I think that there are still some people that don't pay attention, and the bells can be a good reminder. Hey, pay attention. This is big. Christ is becoming incarnate right now. God is here in our midst in a new way on this altar, and that's pretty impressive. Let's mark that and ring that. You know, I heard in some cultures that they would applaud at that moment, like that they would welcome Jesus. I think that's a nice custom. I'm not suggesting we should do that. That's not our culture. But the idea is, hey, welcome here, Jesus. Or like, you know, you go to a store sometimes and the bell rings because someone comes into the store. Well, someone has entered. Jesus has just entered. And so we ring the bell to mark his entrance. So although that might have been the purpose of the bell before, I think it can have a new purpose for us just to remember this is a big deal, and let's mark it. I think in a similar way, you know, I add the water to the wine, and a meaning has been given to that as we look at the divinity of Christ and his humanity, a drop of his humanity and all into the sea of his divinity, right? But that wasn't the original reason why people put water into wine. It was because the Roman wine was too strong, and so they had to water it down. Well, so that's what they were doing, is they're putting water in the wine during the liturgy, and then they gave meaning to it later. So I think we can still use the bells and not have it be the old meaning, but it's a notice for us that God is in the house, and he has come to be with us, and it cause us great rejoicing, and our hearts should rejoice and ring out with joy. Ring out earth and sky, sing to the one who loves us, as that song goes. So that's I think that's everything that I can say about the bells. I think I've communicated everything that I know about that. I know that some people still don't like the decision, but I've got to make decisions as pastor, and I know that not every decision makes every person happy, and I wish I could make everybody happy, but I can't. So that's why we're doing the bells, and we'll have a rest from those during Advent, and we'll plan to bring them back during Christmas to mark the season again. So there you go. There's the fairly long episode of question number 1 of Q&A with Father Kent. Hopefully this has been enjoyable, informative, and you've got all the answers that I can think of anyway. So have a great day.